A lot of people come to us and they're admittedly frustrated with their docs. He was a viewer. He came on to tell us his story, and his doctor was trying to charge him $1,000 for a calcium score. I just hold my head. Watch.
Finally, in 2022, my doctor was getting ready to retire, actually just after my 2023 appointment. I said, I'd still like to have that calcium score.
You were asking for that for 10 years.
14 years before I finally got it. And he said no again. But I said, so when do I get an opportunity to have a say in my health? And I could almost thinking about it going, I'm retiring next year anyway. So he said, okay, it's going to cost you $1,000, but we can give you, that's what he said. When I went for the calcium score,
He didn't know how to get one. I'm sure that was what was going on.
I checked with United Healthcare because that's my Medicare Advantage provider. And he said, no, it's totally covered. You have a $97 copay. When I talked to the hospital, when I went in for the score, I said, I have a copay of $97. No, you're paying for the whole thing. That's all they'll pay us for, the $97. So essentially, I ended up paying the full amount that they went out to. The United thought I should pay, and United was just taking credit for it, which I found a little annoying. But for $100, it was worth it. When I got the results, like I said, I'd done the compound interest calculation in 2004 when I had the first test. The estimate that 20 to 25% came out between, in the time it took me to get this thing, 1,864 and 1,989, depending on whether it was 20 or 25%. I could also calculate it a little differently. Maybe if I started the diet, it would be a little bit lower if I went back 3 years to when I started the diet. But my CAC, I thought, couldn't be that high. It was 1847, which freaked me out, to be perfectly honest. I was beside myself. I called the doctor's office. He couldn't talk to me at that time. So I laid into the nurse, who I knew quite well by that time, about how bad I was. Even if I could have gotten a score when I first started the diet, I would have had a cutoff point. I would have had something to look at to improve.
I hate to interrupt and I hate to criticizing your doc, but we run into this all of the time. I bet your doctor has already demonstrated he didn't understand, he didn't know anything about these, which most doctors don't. They don't understand calcium scores. They're not familiar with it. And, I'm sorry you were going through that. This is not at all unusual in terms of people's experience.
Incidentally, of that 1847, over 1,300 of it is in my right coronary artery. 360 is in LAD.
You usually see most of it in LAD. They come to me with this doom and gloom. Yes, they told me it was the Widowmaker. Bum, bum, bum. Well, it's not the Widowmaker. It's if you're going to get calcium in that arterial bed, it's usually going to be in the L. I've got calcium in my L.
So that's 1,300 in the right is unusual?
It's unusual to have more calcium in the right than the LAD, but it's not rare. It's just not the usual pattern. And my only point was there's another very deceptive and ominous quote, end quote, signal that patients hear when they go through this process, this story that you're relating. Most of them come back with, oh my gosh, I've got a problem in my Widowmaker. The point that I'm trying to make is for the other people, regular people that are listening to you, don't be afraid if you hear a term Widowmaker when people talk about a calcium score, because it's no different from what you're getting. It's just what we tend to see.
Yeah, it was really disturbing. In fact, I looked it up on Google and got the diameter and length of right coronary artery, and it was about equal with the volume on my calcium score, which was over 1,000 on the volume measurement. And when I went in to see the cardiologist, he told me, oh no, it goes into your walls. And so that's why because I asked the question, so how come I'm not dead if I have more calcium in my artery than I do have volume in the artery? It just goes through the wall and it gathers outside the wall. The only other piece of information, when I tried to talk to him, like the lipidologist, he said, I read your file. Twice, he said, I read your file. And that was like, don't tell me anything. I don't need to know anything else that's not in your file. But I can't help but think that all those times I asked for calcium scores, it never made it into my file. It never said patient requested a calcium score and I turned it down. It never said that.
Any guess why?
Yeah, I know exactly why. They didn't want to talk about it, and they didn't want it to show up on a scale that if I dropped dead. I had asked them for a scan for 12 times over 12 years. years. So at any rate, he did give me, the cardiologist, he described to me in detail what a heart attack would likely feel like. And he told me to go to emergency if that happened. And I'm not kidding. That's exactly what he told me. So that's the best that the best medical system in the world can offer. Go to emergency so I can give you a stent or a bypass if you have a heart attack. I'm more interested by being here. I'm more interested in prevention. So now we can go on to the CIMTs, because I went back to your video that you did in October of 2021, and I listened to that video again to say, this is what I need to do. And then I found cardio risk, and I'm not that far from Salt Lake City. If I ask for a tomography from this crew, they're never going to get it, because it's going to be too expensive or it's not in the standard. So I'll just go down and pay for it from Cardio Risk. And for $200, they gave me my first CIMT, which was, again, pretty scary. I had an arterial age of 74 and I was 66. But I would like to talk about the CIMTs. I would prefer if you took this, Dr. Brewer, if you can, just to explain the numbers on it.